Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. We've got a great episode today. It's kind of a continuation of last week's episode, in which we went on the road and went to Roy Huntington's place. Lots of folks have asked to see his shop, or as he calls it, the Imaginarium, so we took a video tour. Before we get into that, though, here's a quick word from our great sponsors, 4patriots.com and creedmoorsports.com. Introducing the 4Patriots Solar Go Fridge, a revolutionary solar-powered fridge on wheels that can protect your food, drinks, and medicine during power outages. This is not an ordinary cooler. The Solar Go Fridge is a refrigerator, freezer, and deep freeze all in one. It can recharge for free in sunlight and even power your phone in a pinch. Plus, its portable design means you can take it with you anywhere, ensuring your essentials stay safe and cool while camping, fishing, and hunting. Right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and use the code GUNMAG to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including the amazing Solar Go Fridge. Don't let a power outage catch you off guard. Just go to 4patriots.com and use the code GUNMAG to get 10% off. Creedmoor Sports is your destination for all things precision shooting. Whether you're new to the sport, an experienced target shooter, or a die-hard competitive shooter, Creedmoor Sports has what you need to take your game to the next level. Visit creedmoorsports.com. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. And if you didn't see last week's episode, we're in the same spot. This is actually, frankly, a continuation of what we talked about last week, but we are in Roy Huntington's Imaginarium, otherwise known as his shop. So we're on location on the road, and if you haven't seen last week's episode, we talked about machine gun ownership. We were shooting some machine guns, so you want to check that out, but we get all kinds of questions and comments about Roy's shop. So we're sitting here, we got the camera set up. I thought, let's just talk about the shop. So we're going to, and we'll give you a little tour here in just a minute. But okay, Roy, describe the shop. We're going to show it, but describe it both in terms of the physical space and your emotional and mental space.
Well, people are funny. I always wanted to have a shop growing up. And, everybody's had a garage shop and everyone's had that. But when we moved here to Missouri, one of my goals was to have a farm pond, to be able to shoot off my back deck and have a shop. And so lo and behold, that's what we have here. And so the shop itself is a 40 by 50 foot steel building. It's insulated. We have air conditioning. It's really nice. And I've had it about 10 years now, I think. And I think the big thing about the shop is that it gives you freedom.
Yeah.
In other words, I do metalworking and woodworking. We work on the car, and I have a milling machine and a lathe and a table saw and a band saw and a shaper and a planer and a joiner, and I have all these things. And people say, oh, well, you're really lucky that you have all these things. And I always remind them, well, actually, I'm 68 years old, and this took me 50 years to get here.
Well, just your clamp rack over here. Oh, my Lord.
You'll see that probably.
6,000 clamps.
Well, and because young people will come over here. I like to mentor young people, and so like I helped a 16-year-old kid build a black powder rifle not too long ago. My daughter comes here. We build furniture together. I have another youngster who comes over. I'm teaching him how to use the wood lathe. And so it's not like all I do is come up here and I'm selfish with all this. Is I look upon this as a way to be able to share and help educate.
Right.
And like my pond is open up to anybody I know who has little kids. And so if you have little kids, then you come here and you fish in my pond and catch bluegill. I even keep little girl fishing poles here that they can borrow, And but I think a lot of young people come into a shop like this. And I remember when I was young, I thought this, why did the old guy next to me always have good tools and a nice car, and the best guns and all that? And, there I was at 18 or 19. You're really frustrated because, you had a 122 and a broken pistol, maybe, right?
Yeah.
And I think so you have to be patient because if you're serious about it, and I was serious about it, that you will eventually get to the point to where you will acquire the tools. You just don't go to Grizzly and spend $30,000 one day and come out with every tool you have.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love the name, and you told me, and I think I referenced it a minute ago, this is the Imaginarium. Talk about that.
Well, I got that I watched a Walt Disney special one time, and it's not the R&D shop, and it's not like that. Their engineers are called Imagineers, and it's where they work as a science is Imaginarium.
Yeah.
And gosh, ever since I saw that, it's how I treat this. And so when I come in here and I think, well, I have this big Purple Heart slab, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
And then I just set my imagination going, and then that's where the beauty of having the tools, because you don't need all the tools to do it. I mean, if I had a handsaw and a hand plane and a couple other tools, I could probably build a lot of what I build. But having the right power tools and knowing how to use all this kind of stuff, I think gives you the freedom to be able to work better, work more efficiently, work faster, and sometimes more accurately.
Yeah.
And so...
And safer too, even though I notice you've got several tourniquets on the workbench.
I have tourniquets, and part of it is to, be smart. I always keep my cell phone in my pocket if I'm up here, because we're working.
Because you're about 200 yards from your house, right?
Yeah, or maybe a little farther. Yeah. I have a big sign on my table saw, and it says, "This will kill you."
You do.
And you will die a long, lingering, painful death. And so I read that every time I go to turn the table saw on.
Yeah.
And I have that mindset for all the tools. But the mechanics are, I can MIG weld and TIG weld and stick weld. I've got a lot of Ryobi tools. I think they're very valuable. They're a good price point. They have such a cross section of amazing functional tools. I have a 220, I think it's about 100-gallon air compressor, which is such a huge advantage, which means then you have air tools.
Right.
And then I have all the woodworking tools you would need. And then part of it's self-sufficient. So I needed a big metal workbench, so I built a big metal workbench, and I needed a rack to store my clamps on, so I made a rack to store my clamps on. So it's really satisfying, and I know a lot of people who don't get started because they see something like this and they think, oh God, I don't have that.
There's no way.
There's no way. I can't do it unless I have a 20-inch planer, you know. But I didn't have a 20-inch planer, I mean, I remember when I was 20 years old and I had a hand plane and a hand saw and a set of screwdrivers and a hammer and, and I built shelves for the garage. And so it's a incremental baby steps kind of a thing, and then you finally reach a point to where, and now I have to admit, it's very satisfying to be able to imagine something and then be able to create it.
Well, I'm so envious and amazed that we've been putting around the property here and, well, yeah, I'm going to do this and build this gun, and then I'm going to build this furniture. It's just like you've got everything you need. But I think the big takeaway, again, is just that whole idea of you got to start someplace. Everybody focuses on the end like this, like I did, and then you realize, it's taken you a long, long time. And you do the same stuff that I've done is you buy the cheap, whatever brand, that works once, and then you throw it away and you realize next time I'm going to buy the good one. Yeah. And then you realize 25 years later, you've got good tools because you bought the second time and spent the money, and then you start accumulating stuff. But it's an incredible area, and it would be nice if we all had those, because gun guys and gals tend to be tinkering kind of people. And
well, that's, I think, why we're talking about this. I recently wrote an article about how I built a gun cabinet, and I built it in this shop, right? And it's so satisfying. I know we talked about man caves, and it's like, well, that's cool. And you go down, drink your beer, and watch football or something. And then when you're done, there's nothing. You have nothing to show for that.
Right.
A headache and the fact you threw up outside or something. But, here, if I spend a very satisfying day in the shop creating something, then when you're done, I just love that feeling. It's very satisfying. You sleep better that night. And plus, 95% of the stuff I make, regardless of what it is, ends up being given away.
Yeah.
Which is very satisfying to do. You make something on your wood lathe out of one of these burls that I cut off a tree, and you look at it and you think, holy cow, I made this thing, and it's actually kind of nice, you know? And then you show it to somebody, and they go, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Well, you can't not give it to them, And I'll tell you what, it's really satisfying. But the main thing, and you touched on it, is the fact that if you want to make something, if you want to get started in metalworking or woodworking or learning how to weld or, any of these kind of things, is that you just have to get 2 or 3 of the most basic tools and then jump on YouTube and watch, some redneck show you how to do it, right? And then, and do it.
Yep.
because otherwise, 40 years from now, you'll be sitting saying, gee, I wished I would have done that.
Yeah. And we've done a couple of podcasts talking about the basic stuff you need to get started, saying gunsmithing. And basically you need a vise and a file, right?
Pretty much,
I mean,
just a few small hand tools and common sense and take baby steps. I mean, it's like, if I wouldn't ask you to make a built-in 100% walnut, shelf system for your wine cellar as with a saber saw and a hammer, right? But you could build a really nice shelf system for your garage. I have workbenches around here that I basically built with a skill saw, and an impact driver, right, with some drywall screws, and it works really well. You just take your time, and that's how you cut your teeth, and you learn how to do it, and you measure twice and cut once, but really you measure 10 times, and then you make the cut, and you still make it wrong. So
well, and you were talking, on the metal working side, you've got all the machines and all that, but like you said, I don't expect you to build a fine quality double rifle out of the gate. Slow down, Speed Racer. Maybe tackle some projects that let you build your skills, and then you kind of move upward and onward, and you appreciate those better tools as you can afford them and, and all that.
I mean, 10 years ago, I started by, I had a table saw and I had some of the basic things. I think I had a joiner at the time. A joiner makes things flat and square.
Yeah.
And so I would go to Home Depot and buy, they call it dimensional lumber, a nice wood, but it's really not. It's usually warped and cupped and stuff like that. And so, but all I did was I learned how to use those couple of tools, and then I just practiced making simple boxes and I remember I made a drawer one time that didn't even fit anything. I just wanted to learn how to make a drawer,
right.
But then eventually you're able to put those things together. And now my daughter and I worked together and made a pretty complicated TV cabinet with drawers and sliders and, and stuff like that. And it was pleasant to be able to take all those skills that I'd slowly learned and then put them all together in something, But I think this is a place of good camaraderie and good feelings, and that you can do good things for good people. I've done some things for nonprofits, help build desks for kids and stuff like that. And so I would say the thing you shouldn't do is sit home and wish. I mean, you need, when you're done listening to this, you need to go in your garage, clean off, if you have a workbench, clean it off, and find your skill saw and find whatever tools you have and get them assembled. Look at them and say, well, what can I make with this? And even if all you do is sand a board flat and learn how to put a good finish on it, well, that's a great first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to say, before we wrap this thing up, Roy's generosity.
We haven't been drinking.
We have not yet.
Not yet.
That comes as soon as we shut off here. But Roy's generosity is wonderful. I have to give him a shout out. He presented my wife with a cool gun that we've kind of been talking about for a while, but he did it all. My wife now has a fuchsia Ruger Wrangler that's Roy has done his magic to.
Wrangler.
Savage Wrangler?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. The Wrangler. I was thinking the other gun. Yeah. I forgot about that. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah.
Okay. Take two kind of thing? No. A Ruger Wrangler, the 22 revolver, single action revolver. And the funny part is, we've been doing some work on that. You've had a story in American Handgunner. I got one coming up in Guns Magazine. But my wife went out and shot my Wrangler with me, and she liked it. And my wife's not a super gun enthusiast. I mean, she's competent, but she's not anywhere into it like us. And she turned to me after shooting that and goes, I really like that. Could I carry that? And I said, well, it's a 20. She's like, but I like the pew pew to it. And she was being silly, of course, but that's kind of been our running gag. So Roy built a beautiful two-tone fuchsia Wrangler, and I just want to, just wonderful that he would do that, and I'm sure you will see it upcoming in some Guns Magazine content. But thank you so much, and he did gift her with a Savage
Rascal. That's what it is, which is a lot like a Wrangler.
Yeah. And it's the cutest little thing, and my wife is somewhat diminutive, and she's just cuter than all get out
and
there.
It's purple. You're right.
It's purple.
Yeah, it's
and
purple.
she was wanging the steel with it right off of Roy's deck.
That was a lot of fun. But
So-
I think that goes to part of if you have a shop. Like I have a lathe and a milling machine for metalworking. And so if you have that ability, though, it gives you the tools to be able to do these kind of things and gift people things that they appreciate. And it's really satisfying. So, I think it may be more selfish than anything. I do it because I enjoy it. So,
yeah. Well, like you said, everybody, finish watching this and get out there and do it. Quit talking about it. Get out there and do it like I always end the podcast with. So, Roy, how about we take a video tour of your shop here, and then I believe the steaks are cooking, and there's some brown beverages in bottles that we need to sample before we go.
That time.
So we'll do our quick video tour, and then we will wrap this thing up.
This is one of the most important machines. It's called a joiner. And I know that sounds funny, but I think it has to do with so you can join wood together. And what it does is you put the wood here and it flattens cupped or curved boards. And you can put it here on the edge, and as you run it through, and this is the cutting blade. And so what you end up with is you end up with truly flat boards, because most of the stuff you buy at Home Depot really isn't truly flat. And this is a magic machine. This is a planer, and this is a big one. This is an industrial planer. It's 20 inches. And so what it does is we flattened one side of the board on the joiner. So now what this does is this allows you to plane the board thin. And so what I mean by that is if I have a cutting board that I just made like this one, then I would put it in here and it would run through the planer and it would plane this off and make it nice and level, and then you can adjust the thickness. These are worth every penny, but you don't need one if you're starting off. If you do anything, the first big investment you make should be a table saw. This truly is the backbone of my shop. With this, you can do anything you can, here's the key word, imagine. It cuts straight, it cuts repeatable, and like I said, this is the backbone of any shop. Okay, this is a clamp rack that I made. Somebody asked me the other day, well, how many clamps do you need? And all I can say is, I have no idea, because I haven't reached that limit yet. I have used almost all of these clamps one time on a project. And every shop needs a nice classic car. And this shop has my 66 Ford Ranchero. So 289 factory air, factory automatic, factory electric windows, believe it or not. So this is one of the reasons why I like to come to the shop, because I just sit here and look at it.
Well, it was great talking to Roy Huntington about his shop, and hopefully the tour gave you a better insight into his Imaginarium. Before we go, I'd like to remind you to check out our great sponsors. Our primary sponsor, 4patriots.com. That's the number 4, the word patriots.com. For all your preparedness needs and supplies, go to 4patriots.com. Use the code GUNMAG at checkout, and you get 10% off your first order. That's 4patriots.com. Use the code GUNMAG. Also, Creedmoorsports.com. If you're a long-distance shooter, you're into rifle accuracy, long-distance hunting, or any of those type of disciplines, check out Creedmoorsports.com. They've got everything you need. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. On behalf of everybody here at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, reminding you, now get out there and get shooting.